On a completely ordinary Sunday morning, drivers in Baton Rouge, Louisiana could see an attack taking place. A man was fighting with a police officer who'd attempted to arrest him, and the officer seemed to be in trouble. Still, everyone just went on with their business except for one person who stopped to help. A petite woman who jumped on the attacker's back and likely ended up saving the officer's life. Vickie Williams-Tillman is a 56-year-old mother and grandmother. She has 3 children and 4 grandchildren. On top of taking care of her family, she works 2 jobs, at a Catholic school during the day and cleaning offices at night. She and her family live in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Vickie is deeply religious and a firm believer in equality among people. She's led a completely ordinary life until one Sunday morning when everything changed. On this fateful morning, Vickie was going to Sam's Club in Baton Rouge to buy groceries she needed to make her husband a nice Sunday meal. As she was driving and humming to the music on the radio, she saw something that made her take pause. On the side of the road, a police officer was in the middle of a heated argument with a suspect. This didn't seem like a regular exchange to Vickie, and she wondered if everything was under control or if the officer needed assistance. Although she wasn't convinced she'd be the right person to help, she still kept an eye on the situation. Feeling worried, she gradually slowed down her car to a complete stop, and that's when it happened. The suspect lunged at the officer. She later told to people, "They began tussling on the other side of the car. It didn't look good." The first thing Vickie did was dial 911, but it didn't end there. She later described it as only the first step that needed to be taken. She told the 911 operator what she witnessed, but, quote, "that wasn't enough," as she put it. "I thought they're not going to make it in time. There was just a small amount of time before something could have happened." According to Baton Rouge Police, Corporal Billy Aime, 44, with 21 years of experience on the force, was simply doing a routine check during a traffic stop a little before 8 a.m. on Sunday on Harry Drive. He found drugs in the suspect's car, so he asked the man to step out of the car, and that's when things went wrong. The suspect, identified as Thomas Bennett, 28, resisted arrest, and when Aime tried to handcuff him, he became aggressive. Aime only managed to handcuff one of his wrists when Bennett allegedly grabbed his baton, which he then used to repeatedly hit the officer in the head. It's at that moment that Vickie, our story's protagonist, took action. "I put the window down and I asked, 'You got it?'" She describes what happened. In the middle of the struggle with the suspect, the officer just mouthed the word "no." That's when, according to her, "The officer and I just locked eyes. I'll never forget the look in his eyes. His eyes said, 'Help me.'" According to police, Williams-Tillman, who is just 5'2", jumped out of her vehicle and onto the back of the assailant, with no concern for her own safety. "It was just instinct," she says. She had no time to think about the situation or the best course of action. She says, quote, "It was just instinct." Vickie simply knew she had to do something immediately, and she said that God led the way. She vaguely remembers what happened in the ensuing chaos, only that the suspect allegedly tried to take the gun out of Aime's holster. Everything happened very fast. Vickie was just trying to stop him. She and the officer both struggled with the suspect as they were trying to prevent him from getting the gun. "They both had their hands on the gun to see who would get it first, so I twisted the suspect's arm," she says. "Then we were all falling. I didn't let go of his arm until we all fell. My tennis shoe came off in all this too." Vickie wouldn't let go, and she didn't even think about herself. The only thing she focused on was helping the officer in need, and she didn't even care if she got hurt in all that. She didn't even realize she got bruised until after it was all over, she says. "But I'm a big girl. I'm a strong woman. Didn't matter at the time." Many people would put their own safety first, but not Vickie. Even after everything, she remained more concerned about the officer. She says Aime was banged up pretty bad. Quote, "He said his head was hurting pretty bad." Just then, backup finally came and arrived and succeeded in subduing Bennett with a stun gun. They took him into custody and booked him into East Baton Rouge Parish Prison. According to the police, Bennett got charged with disarming a police officer, resisting an officer with violence, battery on a police officer, aggravated battery, possession of cocaine, and possession of drug paraphernalia. Bennett was held in custody on a $167,500 bond. Consequently, he was sentenced to 8 years in prison. In August, he pleaded guilty to several charges, disarming a police officer, aggravated battery, and cocaine possession, as well as one burglary charge that was unrelated to this incident. According to court records, Bennett was on probation at the time of arrest. Based on information from the Department of Corrections in September 2014, Bennett was caught in possession of OxyContin, which is a Schedule II narcotics charge. He was placed on probation in October 2014, which was supposed to end 8 months after this incident. Vickie said that she and Aime hugged after the attack. "All these emotions came out," she says. "It was like we already knew each other." And when you hear this story, it's easy to believe the Good Samaritan really was sent from above to his aid. So it's not at all surprising that the two felt a connection that's hard to explain. After the bonding experience they had, it would be impossible not to. Williams-Tillman hurt her hand and wrist in the attack and was taken to hospital along with a police officer and the suspect. There she was treated for her injuries and released. Her bruises weren't bad according to her, but the police still wanted to make sure everything was fine with their, quote, angel. While all this was happening, her family was at home, completely unaware of the adventure their wife, mother, and grandmother was involved with. They had no idea Vickie had become a hero in their town. When they learned what happened, they were just relieved she was safe. My oldest daughter started crying, saying, "What if you didn't make it back to us?" However, Vickie didn't share her daughter's feeling. "I didn't fear anything," she says. "There was no time to fear, I just walked in the path God had for me." As a devout Christian woman, Vickie had put her trust in God, as she puts it. She simply knew it was the right thing to do, and that was what guided her actions. Now that it's all behind her and Williams-Tillman feels relieved, she's being praised as a hero. Even more so since this incident came in the wake of the police department losing officers Montrell Jackson, 32, and Matthew Gerald, 41, in the fatal attack on Baton Rouge Police that happened last summer. Brad Garafola, 45, of the East Baton Rouge Sheriff's Office also lost his life in this attack. The Baton Rouge Police Department expressed their gratitude on their Facebook page and told the town all about her selfless act, but this wasn't all. A bit later on, Mayor-President Sharon West Broome made the decision to hold a special press conference in honor of this heroic grandmother. "What Mrs. Tillman did is certainly not something we hear a lot," West and Broome said to People. "She was motivated by her concern for someone in distress, in this case a police officer who serves our community." West and Broome, who is in awe of this brave woman, also said, "I have such great admiration for her for demonstrating to all of us the best of mankind." Baton Rouge Police Chief Carl Dabadie shared with People just how deeply grateful he felt. "Words cannot explain the gratitude I have for the bravery and total disregard for her own safety to physically step in and save the life of Corporal Billy Aime." He continued, "Her unselfish and heroic act sends the message that our community supports and needs its law enforcement." At the press conference, Aime embraced the tiny woman who saved his life. While it may not surprise you to hear the hero and the guest of honor got teary-eyed, Aime also became emotional, and his voice cracked as he expressed his gratitude, saying, "This is a true hero right here that saved my life." McNeely told People that Vickie saved not one but maybe even 2 lives. You may wonder how. Well, the second person she possibly saved is none other than the suspect and assailant himself. "This was a life-and-death encounter," McNeely says. He continues to explain, "The officer would have been within his right to use deadly force since the suspect was striking the officer about the head with a baton. We've just lost too many men," Vickie adds. "Thank God I was able to help. It doesn't matter that I'm a civilian and he's an officer. Doesn't matter you black or white, big or small. I wanted to help him." Her bravery and big heart truly are an example to us all. After everything, when she talks about it, she's still modest and puts the focus on what she sees as more important issues. Vickie truly is a hero, but she's not the only one, and that's something we can all take comfort in. There are still good people around the world helping their fellow men, whether they're citizens or police officers. An example is a case in Arizona in April 2017, when another Good Samaritan with a gun saved an injured cop. State Trooper Ed Anderson was shot in his right shoulder, which paralyzed it and stopped him from using his own weapon. It was 4:30 in the morning in Tonopah, Arizona. Ed Anderson got hit. It was dark and he was alone except for the person who just shot him and an injured female companion. Even though the man shot the officer, he wasn't done. The man charged Anderson, hitting him with a weapon and bashing his head into the pavement. Anderson said, "I kicked him into the fast lane hoping that a car would come by and hit him, but his attempt didn't work." The officer rolled onto his right side onto his injured shoulder, trying to shield his gun from the attacker whose weapon was now empty. That's when Anderson heard a voice, followed by gunshots. And suddenly it was all over. His attacker lay dead in front of him. He was alive. But who was his savior? It was actually a former felon, Anderson later learned. A man welcomed God in his life and turned over a new leaf. The man was a lifelong hunter who begged a judge to reinstate his rights to carry a weapon again, the weapon he just used to save Anderson's life. Thomas Yoxall was the man in question. He was driving by when he saw the man beating Anderson. Yoxall pulled over, took his gun from the console of his pickup and left his car, stepping out onto the highway. First, he shouted at the attacker, asking him to stop, but when he didn't, Yoxall shot him, saving the police officer. Since this incident, Anderson and Yoxall became good friends and remain so to this day.